Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wrestling with the Plot. My name's Cameron, and although I don't look it, I'm very excited and a little nervous. This is the channel's first official video segment episode, whatever you want to call it. And why is that important? Well, when you read the first pages of a book, or watch the premiere of a new TV show, or try peanut butter ice cream for the first time you experience something helps determine how you feel about it going forward. So if I put on a bad show, then people would dislike and switch to another video. But if I was entertaining and informative, then people will say, yes, more please. So there's a lot of pressure for me to get this right. Now, I've been trying to figure out what my first topic should be about. And I think since we're talking about making a first impression, we may as well talk about writing the first line in your story. Now, before we begin, you should know crafting the perfect opening line for your story is something that will likely take multiple attempts. You're probably more likely to hit the lottery than you are to nail a perfect opening hook on your first try. And it's perfectly normal to feel some type of stress about creating a great opening line and having it in place on the first page. I mean, if you're writing and then you're working on chapter 5 and then chapter 6 and then chapter 7, but the first line of chapter 1 is not done, for me personally, that's something that kind of makes my brain buzz just a little bit, knowing that I'm up here and that I left something undone behind me, because I'm one of those types that likes to just pave straight through. And so just remember that it's not set in stone. So keep in mind and think about what it is that you want for your first line, but don't get hung up on it. So if you write something and you put it there, it doesn't have to stay there. It doesn't have to be perfect right away. It's going to evolve as your story does, and then anytime that you think of something, you can go back and you can change it. Now, what does an opening line do? Well, this is one line, one sentence that tries to capture the attention of the reader while also presenting an enticing snapshot of what will happen in the rest of your book. But it's also the first step in a cascade effect that will lead the reader through your story. They read the first line, and then they go from there to the first paragraph, the first page, and the first chapter, and the first act, and so on and so on. So the first line is important, but it's ultimately a very tiny piece of a much bigger system. Now, it might be more important than most other individual sentences, but on the whole, it's still just a small part. Now, a perfect first line followed by a horrid paragraph or page would probably not fare as well than a book that starts off solid but low key, but maintains that throughout and delivers on whatever your opening line promises. So it has to catch attention, but it doesn't have to be a glitter bomb. Humans are inquisitive, and sometimes when we're faced with a mystery or an incompletion, we end up in this state where we don't need sleep, but we need answers. So if you present a good question or promise the prospect of an entertaining read, then your reader will likely continue reading. And for all the time that we spend on our first sentence, if they read the second sentence, then that's it. The opening line has accomplished its mission to relay the reader to the rest of the paragraph, and so on and on. So the first line is important, but it's not the see all end all. And even though we're going to probably spend possibly hours working on it, it's only going to take a reader a second to read it. And then after that, they're going to be done with it. All right, so now I want you to think of your book as a house. People walk in, and instead of having from the door straight into a hallway, there's like a main living room area, like a foyer. Now, think of your opening line as a photo placed right at eye level at the door. It's the first thing that everyone sees when they come in before they look at the rest of the room and eventually go into the house. You have to decide what's going to be in that portrait and what kind of frame you're going to put it in. Now, would you put up a family photo in a nice wooden frame? Would it be like a picture of nature with mountains and waterfalls and a black metal frame? Could it be one of those live, laugh, love posters that makes every man sigh when he sees it, like, ugh? Or would it just be a poster of your favorite band just taped up to the wall with 4 pieces of tape on all 4 corners? Now, based on those options, you can probably imagine that different people live in each one of those houses, and so the rest of the interior design of the room would probably match the style of whoever lives there. A poster probably belongs to some young college age kid with minimal furniture. A family photo might suggest that there has to be accommodation for more people, because if you have guests over but then you also have family, you're going to need more than just a couch. And then a picture of nature in a black metal frame suggests a more modern style, probably a more sleek look. So they probably might have more plants or little statues and more like a deco art style, maybe. And so you have to decide what you want your reader to see first, and then the rest of the living room has to match and present a place that your guests, the type of people that you want entering your house, can feel comfortable enough to spend time there. Because if a person comes into the house and they're like, I don't like this, they're not going to want to stay long. Whereas if you decorate for the type of people that, the type of person that you are, the type of people that you want visiting you, then they were like, oh, well, let's all go hang out at your house. You have the pool table, so everyone wants to hang out there. Now, obviously, I can't write your line for you, but I can give you some things to think about that might help you figure it out if you're having trouble working on it. So we have the photo and we have the frame. The photo is going to be the thing that you decide to focus on, and then the frame is going to be how you decide to present it. Now, there are a couple of things that you could decide to focus on. You could focus on the character, the main character, or possibly a side character. You could focus on the central theme of your story. You could present a conflict of some kind, or you could focus on the setting, or you can go broad and just focus on the entire world in general. Now, one thing to remember about the difference between a setting and the world is that a setting is the place where that scene takes place, whereas the world is everything as a whole. And then to frame that, to present it, there are a couple of different ways you can do that. You could present it through action. You could have dialogue where they're talking about whatever thing you decided to focus on, or you could do narration. You can do inner narration if it's a first person story, or you can do outer narration, or you can just give a description. Now, you can mix and match these focuses and frames to come up with an introduction that works for the genre of your story as well as fit within your writing style, so that you want to play to your strength. If you're good at writing dialogue, do that. If you're good at writing action, do that. If you just want to narrate it, then you can do that. Just whatever you feel comfortable doing, you play to your own strength because you're trying to put your best foot forward here. Alright, so I'm going to do a couple that I made up kind of on the fly just to sort of demonstrate a few of these focuses and frames, so that way we can kind of get the picture of how we mix them up together. So the first one that I wrote, I decided to do one about concentrating on the character of that story. And I was trying to figure out how to do something of a narration, and then I just decided, well, I'm just going to describe it. And so the sentence that I came up with, it was, everyone gets their 15 minutes of fame. Jonathan Newton, with 4 toes on his right foot and 7 on his left, was famous for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. So we have our character, his name is Jonathan, and we know that he has 4 toes on one foot and 7 toes on the other foot. Now, first of all, anyone who doesn't have the standard 5 and 5, 10 toes, that is something of interest. It'd be like you're missing a toe. So on the first foot, it says 4 toes. It's pretty simple. I mean, it could have gotten cut off in an accident, could have been born missing short 1 toe. So 4 toes is abnormal, but it's not too abnormal. Same with 6. There's some people who are born with 6 toes and then they just have them surgically removed. However, on his other foot, he has 7 toes. So it's like, wait a minute, what is wrong with this guy's feet? And then you go to the next part where it says he was famous for exactly 3 hours and 17 minutes. Now, if you just said for 3 hours, it's like, okay, well, everyone gets 15 minutes, so he was famous for a little while, but that was still pretty short. Why was it so short? But then you say 3 hours and 17 minutes. That's very specific. That means something happened. And then so we have this character named Jonathan, and we know that he was famous for a very specific amount of time, and that there's something going on with his feet, and we don't know what it is or why it is. If he was born that way, is it an accident? Is it a genetic thing or an experiment gone wrong? What happened? We don't know, and so it's possible that we would want to find out, because that's something that sticks with you. Now, another one that I came up with was for I decided to do a conflict, and then this one I did internal narration. Now, remember that setting is where the scene takes place, and that the world is the entire area. Setting is the world. Setting is where. Yeah, I messed that up. Setting is where the scene takes place. The world is where the setting is. Bam, got it. And same with narration. When it's internal, that would be inside one character's mind as he's telling a story about himself or herself. And then outer narration is more of a third person type. So I did first person on this one, and I came up with, here we go. I said, I don't care what that two-timing hussy says. Pineapples do go on a pizza, and my father was a hard-working man. Now, first of all, he says, I don't care what that two-timing hussy says. So basically, he's already flinging mud at this other person. And they are apparently having an argument about whether or not pineapples go on a pizza, which at one point in time was a thing here in our world where people were getting into debates on the internet about whether or not pineapple was a pizza topping. So this is a familiar argument. But then somehow, one way or another, it goes on that they were also talking about his father and that he was hardworking. So, what did this person say about his father? Is this his mother that he's calling a two-timing hussy? Why are they arguing about pizza? And why does that argument also just lead back into his his father? Like, there's a lot going on, and it's just it kind of crosses the line twice. Like he is talking about his mother, then they're talking about pizza, and then they go back. He's talking about his family, then they're talking about the argument, and then he's back to talking about his family. So even though it's a quick sentence and there's clearly a fight, and it's how did we get there? Like what is going on? How do those two topics relate to each other? Like why is his father and pizza being in the same conversation? And so we might need to find that out. And I don't know, these feel really silly for me to do, but I mean, I gotta do examples. So I'm gonna just do one more. And I like this one. It's about sitting, and I chose dialogue for this one. So there were five focuses and 5 frames, and I kind of did sort of like the 3 on the ends. And so I came up with, I said, attention all residents, the southern indicator's light has just turned from green to yellow. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Now, there are a couple of things here. Obviously, they are calling us out over the intercom. A light somewhere that was green has turned yellow. And of course, in our world, we know green is generally the color for good, red is generally the color for bad, and then yellow is, caution in the middle. Like green means go, red means stop, yellow means slow down. So this light has turned from green to yellow, and they're to begin evacuation procedures immediately. So what happens when the light turns red? If there is a red light, like basically it suggests something bad has happened, an indicator has picked up on it, and whatever's happening, this is not even as bad as it gets. It could possibly get worse. And so it's just in I each of these sentences I present a different focus in a different way, and it's designed to present a question or pique your interest. And basically, it's like for all the things that I said, I want you to have to ask, well, what happens next? And you don't have to concentrate on just one aspect either. The more information you can present in the opening lines opens up more points of interest and gives more clues, but you still want to be economical. Effectively figure out how to present as much of your world in as few words as possible to draw readers in and plant seeds in their head that they want to water and grow by reading your book to completion. So that's all that I have to say about that. I hope that it was helpful and at least partially amusing, me embarrassing myself by reading made up sentences that I came up with. But if you have a favorite opening line in a book that you've read that you can remember, why don't you leave that line and the book in the comments so that way other people who are trying to be inspired for their line have more examples than mine, because they may or may not have been terrible. I don't know yet. I'll let you tell me. Also, if you'd like, if there's a subject or topic that you think that I should try to cover, you can put those in the comment also. I look forward to hearing from you, and again, thank you for watching my video.